Welcome to the Anime Audiophile Podcast. Please like and subscribe for more. Thank you. Itachi Shinden, Book of Dark Night. Chapter 4. Chapter 4. Phoenix in the blue sky, remembering to dance on injured wings. Kohina Mukai would be taking the following day off, his first in a month. Once Itachi learned this fact from the mouth of Shimura Danzo, he hardened his resolve. The arrangements were soon made, and Itachi and Uchiha Shisui, who was to accompany him, had their duty schedules changed. Through Danzo's agency, Itachi was going to kill a ninja living in his own village the following day. Mukai might have been a traitor, but the fact that he was kin to Itachi was unchanged. He was a comrade from the village. It would have been a lie to say that Itachi wasn't reluctant to kill the man. But this mission was more critical than any he accepted thus far in his life as a ninja. He could not refuse. Itachi kept very much in mind the fact that Mukai was a traitor. The man had been talking with Kiri in secret and had leaked crucial confidential information about Konoha. Thinking about this helped Itachi set aside his feelings of guilt. "Everything's ready." A cheerful voice interrupted his meditations. "Just like you told me, I put it out there." His little brother smiled. Itachi returned a grin. They were in the middle of the woods. Now that he knew the mission would be completed the next day, Itachi was taking a break, and Sasuke had begged him to join him for some training. In amongst the close-standing trees, Sasuke had hidden targets marked with double circles. And quite splendidly, Itachi couldn't see a single one of them. "All right, Itachi," Sasuke urged him in a spirited tone, unable to hide his excitement. Nodding, Itachi grabbed his kunai. Once he had wedged one in between all his fingers, he had exactly 8 in his hands. 8 iron claws sticking out from loose fists. He lowered his face and focused his mind just a little. He then poured the chakra built up in the depths of his stomach into his eyes. Sharingan. The breathing of the trees grew restless at once. In the rumbling pulsation of writhing life, he saw small circular foreign objects. 8 of them. Itachi let out a small breath, and then he kicked lightly at the ground. In the air, his head and his feet traded places. With his body upside down, his center of gravity pointed downward and stretched out, stabilizing his posture. And stabilizing his posture increased the precision of his control over his kunai. He closed his eyes and imagined the 8 targets in his mind. There were 2 that he couldn't reach from this position. The one knocked over artlessly behind the front of the enormous rock was going to be the most trouble. First, he threw the 4 blades in his left hand in a single motion. All unerringly pierced the 4 targets in relatively easy locations. Next, the 2 kunai clutched between the thumb and middle finger of his right hand. These also dug into their intended targets without incident. 2 left. Itachi's body was still in the air. Not even a second had passed since he leapt up from the ground. He switched the kunai held between his middle and ring fingers to his left hand. Now he had 1 kunai in each hand. He waved both arms and threw the kunai at the same time. The trajectories of the 2 blades overlapped. They collided in midair with a sharp clang, and then bounced off each other to fly off in unexpected directions. He landed, his Sharingan glowing with a crimson light. As he stood up slowly, he felt the presence of his brother before him. Sasuke had hidden himself behind a tree to avoid danger, but now he popped his head out suddenly. He seemed dumbfounded at Itachi's skill in hitting all the targets. Sasuke's mouth hung open as he stared at the rock before him, the location of the most troublesome target. Naturally, Itachi hit that one too. He had made the last 2 kunai collide, and changed their trajectories, to that end. "Wow! You even nailed that target in the blind spot behind the rock." Sasuke flew out from behind the tree. He was clutching kunai in both hands. He was in such high spirits after that display of his big brother's skills that he was practically beside himself. "All right. My turn. Sasuke, we have to go." Sasuke was practically pulsating with excitement, but he stopped abruptly. The face he turned toward his brother was thoroughly displeased. "You promised to teach me new shuriken techniques." He glared at his brother in protest. Itachi had indeed promised. But he had more than fulfilled that promise with what he had just shown the younger boy. "I've got kind of important mission tomorrow. I have to get ready." Mostly mentally. His little brother turned his face away and pouted. The cool eyes beneath the furrowed brow were twisted up as if he were about to burst into tears. "You're a liar, Itachi." Sasuke wasn't angry that Itachi hadn't taught him a new shuriken technique. He was angry because his time with his big brother had been cut short. If possible, Itachi would have trained with Sasuke to his younger brother's heart's content. But the mission the next day was not a simple one. He couldn't neglect his preparations. He wanted to cry, too. His little brother turned his face to the ground, even as he peered out at Itachi with resentful eyes. Itachi waved him over, and the clouds on Sasuke's face were instantly cleared away. Happy footsteps ringing out in the forest, Sasuke raced over to him. "Sorry, Sasuke." "Another time," he said, as he popped his index finger up and poked his still-moving little brother in the forehead. "Oh." Sasuke closed his eyes and cried out, his progress thwarted. He looked up at Itachi, his mouth turned downward on one side. Whenever Sasuke got this look on his face, Itachi knew he was planning something. "Check this out." Crossing both arms and readying his kunai, Sasuke smiled boldly. Yeah. Before Itachi had the chance to stop him, Sasuke was flying toward the target. "Hey! You're going to hurt yourself," Itachi shouted, while before his eyes, Sasuke twisted his ankle and plunged magnificently into the ground, head first. On the way home, carrying Sasuke after he hurt his ankle, Itachi walked toward the Uchiha compound in Konoha. Feeling the warmth of his brother on his back, the quiet time together passed peacefully. Sasuke's aura sent out faint ripples. Itachi stopped and looked at his younger brother over his shoulder. "What's wrong?" "This is where father works." Konoha Military Police Force Headquarters, Itachi answered his brother matter-of-factly, looking up at the massive concrete building, constructed with a circle as a keynote. "This has been bothering me for a while," Sasuke continued, sounding rather grown up. "Why is the Uchiha clan crest in the military police force symbol?" "You noticed that, huh?" "Of course," Sasuke replied, straightening up. Itachi's mouth naturally stretched into a smile. "Right. Well, basically, our Uchiha ancestors organized and founded the military police force. That's why they integrated our crest into the symbol for the organization. The Uchiha clan has handled and maintained public order in this village for a long time. The crest is proof of our proud history," Itachi explained, avoiding difficult words as best he could in his attempt to fulfill his brother's desire to learn anything and everything. Sasuke listened silently. Right now, the Uchiha clan is smaller, but even now, basically all of us belong to the first squadron here and contribute to maintaining public order in the village. There were exceptions, like Shisui. Itachi had heard that the ninjas of the village had made an appeal, praising Shisui's superior talents. If Shisui were to join the military police force, his interactions with ninjas outside the military police force would have been severely curtailed, and he would have been completely contained within the Uchiha clan's framework. Due to entreaties from ninjas in the village who feared that outcome, Shisui had been assigned missions out in the field. However, Sasuke didn't need to hear all that, so Itachi abandoned that line of thought. The only ones capable of cracking down on ninja crime are even greater ninja. And the only one capable of bringing to a close battles started by other ninjas is an even greater ninja. "Are you going to join too, Itachi?" Sasuke's innocent question pierced his heart. "I'm not." The real answer got stuck in his throat. "Dunno. We'll have to see." He could never tell his little brother about joining the Umbu for the sake of their clan and how dissatisfied they were with the village. All he could do was offer some non-committal response. "Do it!" Sasuke shouted, in a voice free of worry, unaware of the dark circumstances of adulthood. His glittering purity wrenched Itachi's heart. "When I grow up, I'm gonna join the military police force, too." Both brothers in the military police force, encouraging each other in their work. Days passing like a dream. But that day will never come. Itachi was going into the Umbu. And even if he lived in a world that would allow him to join the military police force, he could never be content with that fate. His dream was to rid this world of war. The vessel of the military police force was simply too small to realize something that big. "Father's coming to my entrance ceremony tomorrow. It's the first big step toward my dream," Sasuke said. Itachi's baby brother's dream was to work as a ninja, together with his big brother, in the military police force. Itachi was glad. But that dream would never be realized. "Yeah." The vague reply was all Itachi could give Sasuke. When they passed through the gates separating the Uchiha compound from the village, Itachi abruptly felt an aura beside the wall. "You're late. What were you up to?" "I want to talk to you." Their father, Fugaku, arms folded in front of him, was looking at Itachi. "Let's get home." "Yes, father," Itachi nodded. Their father started walking straight toward their house with a confident stride, and Itachi moved heavy feet to chase after him, his little brother still on his back. When had he become annoyed at facing his father like this? He knew the answer. But he didn't want to acknowledge it. His father's room. Their father sat with his arms crossed before Itachi and Sasuke, sitting alongside each other. "I'm told it's tomorrow," Fugaku said abruptly. Itachi stayed silent, feeling his heart start to pound in his chest. He knew what his father meant. Fugaku was talking about the assassination of Mukai the following day. That was what was making Itachi's heart beat faster. Exactly how much does my father know? And who did he hear about the mission from? Itachi had a vague answer to the latter question. It had to be someone close to Danzo. But why had Danzo leaked information about the mission to his father? Doubt called up more doubt, stirring up Itachi's heart. Ah, that's my boy. It's only been 6 months since your promotion to Chunin, and you've already come so far. Itachi looked at his father silently, and Sasuke turned worried eyes on his older brother. Tomorrow is a special mission, and I've decided to go along. Itachi's heart pounded more fiercely than it had all day. But the rocking of his brother's heart next to him was many times fiercer. Their father's head was filled with the clan, and he had forgotten exactly how important the next day was for his younger son. Anger toward his father welled up in Itachi. "If you succeed in this mission, Itachi, your entry into the Umbu is basically secured." Fugaku looked at his silent son, his eyes dyed crimson. "You know that, yes?" Itachi was only allowed to take one person on the Mukai assassination. He had also already told Danzo that Shisui would be that one person. The fact that his father didn't know this meant that he didn't know the particulars of the mission. He had likely only been told the day the mission was to be carried out. Fugaku despised the village, and here he was being toyed with via information brought in from the village. His father seemed so pitiable to him, Itachi could hardly stand it. A mission that required him to be ready to die. It had to be Shisui by his side. He would not allow his father's interference. "You don't have to worry so much." Besides, Itachi looked at Sasuke. Even though he was likely on the verge of bursting out into loud sobs, his wise little brother was pushing back his own feelings and smiling. "It's all right, Itachi." He felt as though he could hear Sasuke's voice in his head. A smile spread across Itachi's lips, and he put his words into his eyes. "Tell him. Tomorrow is a big day for you, right?" He gave the smaller boy a push with the power in his eyes. "Dad. Tomorrow's mission is a very important one for the Uchiha clan." His little brother's courage was shattered by the hard words of their father, his mind focused on nothing but the clan. Sasuke lowered his head, a frozen look on his face, as he desperately held back his tears. Itachi's anger toward his father surpassed his limits. Was the clan that important? Did he not care about Sasuke? All that Itachi saw in his father's eyes was the future of the clan. The man hadn't given a single thought to the fact that his elder son was about to go on a possibly fatal mission. And he didn't even see his younger son. How could he ever win against Konoha with such a narrow outlook? Itachi hated all of it. You know, I'm not going on the mission tomorrow, after all, Itachi said. Have you lost your mind? You know how important tomorrow is. What on earth are you saying? I'm going to Sasuke's entrance ceremony at the academy tomorrow. His father caught his breath. At that moment, for the first time, Fugaku remembered what Sasuke was doing the following day. This, too, made Itachi so angry, he could hardly stand it. It was sad. It's customary for relatives to attend. You must have gotten the notice. Father, Itachi was serious when he said he was abandoning the mission. Those words came from the bottom of his heart and were no lie. His father tried to understand this. After a fleeting silence flowed through the room, he let out an exasperated sigh. All right. Enough. I'll go to the academy. Fugaku then stood and walked toward the dinner table, where their mother was waiting. Itachi and Sasuke followed him out of the room. From the garden came the dry sound of the bamboo rocker arm of the Shishuradoshi clacking against the stone. Itachi knew that now that he had said all that, his father would absolutely go to Sasuke's entrance ceremony. His son's entry into the Anbu was the first step toward realizing the dearest wishes of the clan. He couldn't make a mess of it over Sasuke's entrance ceremony. It was precisely because Itachi couldn't have his father come along on the mission that he had seriously intended to go to Sasuke's entrance ceremony. And being sick and tired of everything, wanting to go to the academy, none of that was a lie either. But still, he couldn't actually give up on accomplishing the mission with Shisui. Joining the Anbu was not a foothold to realizing the dreams of his clan. It was a modest step toward realizing his own dream of becoming the most skilled ninja in the world in order to get rid of all fighting. He had no intention of giving up on that. And to that end, he had used his little brother. He despaired of himself. Although it had been decided that their father would take part in the entrance ceremony after all, Sasuke seemed to feel responsible for the stormy air between Itachi and Fugaku, and he trailed quietly behind his older brother. Itachi looked at him over his shoulder, and hiding his own feelings of guilt, he said, "Make sure you really ice that ankle." Did his face stiffen up as he smiled when he said that? He hoped not. All right, his younger brother replied, a complicated look on his face. Itachi had no idea what to say to Sasuke at that moment. It's no exaggeration to say that I live for that kid, Kohinata Mukai said, blowing cigarette smoke out into the air, while Itachi held his breath before him. In the hand not holding the cigarette, Mukai clutched a silver bottle of sake. The three ninjas stood looking at each other. Surrounded by more than 10 Kiri ninjas sprawled out on the ground, unconscious. They had all been defeated by Itachi and Shisui alone. Surrender quietly, Kohinata Mukai, Shisui said, from beside Itachi. The comma-shaped marks of the Sharingan had already popped up in his eyes. The Hokage is lenient on those who turn themselves in. He probably won't kill you. Hanging his head to avoid those Sharingan, Mukai let an ironic smile slip across his face. Shisui of the body flicker, I mean, you're a well-known ninja. But still, well, I always got the impression you only walked in places where the sun hits. Or, he stopped suddenly, and drank from the silver bottle. Is it that you're still just a kid? Mukai opened only his right eye, and sneered. His condescending attitude forced a line to carve itself out between Shisui's eyebrows. You know what I've done. So you should know whether or not I'd be allowed to turn myself in. A flick of Mukai's thumb, and ashes fell from his cigarette. That I would get for my assassins, the two prodigies of the Uchiha clan, at the height of their popularity, is truly the greatest honor. He tossed his cigarette in the portable ashtray he pulled out of his pouch, and then put the cap on the silver bottle before tucking it away in the pocket of his vest. "Real serious situation here," he murmured, his chakra suddenly increasing dramatically. His shadow clones had returned. When Mukai's chakra grew in volume, Itachi released his own shadow clone, standing watch at Konoha Hospital. Now that he knows the dad he was talking to till just a minute ago was a shadow clone, my son's probably angry. Mukai glared at the two ninjas in front of him as he scratched his head. Now I'm gonna have to make some kind of excuses when I get home. He dropped his hips low and readied himself with his palms at chest height in the manner particular to Gentle Fist. Why would a ninja as good as you be a spy? Itachi spat out the feelings in his heart. When you get old, things happen. You can't understand what those things are until you get some years on you. So even if I did tell you why, you'd only get half of it. If you die, what happens to your son in the hospital? Because of those things I mentioned, I can't be dying here. Even if you guys were to kill me. Countless lines raced out from Mukai's left eye all around him. Byakugun, Itachi shouted, but Shisui was already flying backwards to get some distance from Mukai. I can't go easy on you. Forgive me. Mukai's voice reached Itachi's ears. At once, the distance between them closed. With incredible speed, right and left palms came flying toward Itachi's throat and solar plexus simultaneously. When Mukai's sword hand stabbed into Itachi's stomach, reaching for his solar plexus, Mukai bent his index and middle fingers inside Itachi's body. Ah! Mukai spat out a breath that was a battle cry, and his sword hand yanked out Itachi's intestines. Instantly, the Itachi standing there with his guts ripped out transformed into an overwhelming number of crows, and danced upward. Rather than try to avoid the beaks attacking him, Mukai endured it with an elegant turn of the head, as though nothing were happening. Shisui was creeping up behind him. Fire style. Great fireball technique. He quickly wove the signs, and a ball of fire large enough to swallow Mukai shot out of his mouth. Mukai faced the ball of flames dead on, still standing with the palm of his right hand thrust out in front of his face. Direct hit. No. The ball of flames split perfectly into two in front of him. It didn't look like he had executed some kind of jutsu. And it wasn't as though his body were cloaked in some kind of special aura. To Itachi, it was like the ball of flames itself had decided to split on its own in front of the man. Gentle Fist cuts off enemy chakra. Using it means being very familiar with that flow. Jutsu are the embodiment of chakra. If you can read the flow, it's not so tough to split it, Mukai explained with a grin, and raced toward Shisui. Shisui's face darkened. Even if he did have above-average physical jutsus, his opponent was a user of Gentle Fist, a technique far beyond the level of a physical jutsu. It was no wonder Shisui looked gloomy. Itachi watched from a distance on high as the battle unfolded. Inside the domain of the Land of Fire, 3 or so hours to the north of Konoha, the three ninjas were fighting in a small basin surrounded by slightly elevated mountains. Not a single blade of grass grew on the rocky mountains, and there were any number of places for a lone person to hide. Itachi had slipped behind a convenient rock and was watching over the other two as they fought. It had only been his shadow clone up against Mukai. Itachi hadn't moved from this place since the fight started. Their opponent was a user of Gentle Fist. It was almost too difficult to strike the killing blow in close combat. This contest would be decided by a single long-distance blow. Sharingan was a visual jutsu. Users put their own chakra into their eyes and ensnared opponents in the jutsu. In other words, as long as Itachi could see the fight, he could ensnare his enemy in the jutsu. Eyes meaning was not something that happened only subconsciously. Expecting no particular trouble, an enemy would let their gaze race around the scene. As long as that optical axis and the optical axis of the jutsu user were in alignment, it was possible to create a situation in which the enemy's gaze would intersect with the jutsu user's, without the enemies even being aware of it. Itachi was waiting for that moment. And to that end, Shisui had dared to take on dangerous close-range combat, trying his best to get Mukai in alignment with Itachi's optical axis. If Itachi could just activate the visual jutsu of the Sharingan, they could make this work. If they managed to pry open one small seam in Mukai's mind, Itachi could use that as a foothold and gradually push his visual jutsu to encroach ever further. The problem was that first step. In addition to his vast experience, Mukai was a user of the Byakugan, a Kekkei Genkai that allowed the flow of chakra to be sensed visually. Naturally, he understood what the Sharingan was and could do. Itachi and Shisui had adopted this strategy to break down those tall walls. Just barely dodging Mukai's left thrust, Shisui threw his torso back. Given the perfect opportunity, Mukai pressed in on the younger man. Shisui leapt backward, as if in flight. In that instant, Mukai's face was turned toward the rock Itachi was hiding behind. But their optical axes still had not intersected. Mukai turned his gaze toward Shisui as he landed, and then abruptly averted his eyes. The Sharingan had been activated. Naturally, Shisui's Sharingan had been a feint. The place toward which Mukai had turned his face was in the exact direction of the rock concealing Itachi. Itachi's gaze, his mind sharply focused on his enemy, and Mukai's gaze, unconsciously taking Itachi in, intersected. Or they should have. When they were a hair's breadth apart, Mukai kicked suddenly at the ground and flew upward. An incredible leap. When he landed, he kicked at another rock and bounded into the sky again. Itachi's hiding spot had been found out. In the previous instant, Mukai had noticed Itachi's presence with the power of the Byakugan. He had probably also understood in that moment that Itachi's Sharingan had been activated. Perhaps to confirm his own hunch, or perhaps to draw Itachi out into the fight. Either way, Mukai was leaping straight toward the rock where Itachi was hiding. Itachi didn't fail to notice Shisui standing behind him, grinning, before his friend disappeared. Shisui next appeared in front of Mukai. TCH. Clicking his tongue, Mukai was knocked back into the rock wall, rising up perpendicularly as Shisui's kick ripped into his face. His skull split open. Or so Itachi thought, before his eyes took in a splintered log. "Shadow clone," he cried out. Right, he heard Mukai behind him. Gentle fist stance. 8 trigrams 2 palms. The heels of his right and left palms slammed into Itachi's stomach in succession. 8 trigrams 4 palms. Before Itachi had a chance to breathe, this time, 4 blows slammed into him. 8 trigrams 8 palms. As if sneering at Itachi's brain as it fumbled for the start of a counterattack, Mukai assaulted him mercilessly with successive attacks. "Nah!" Itachi heard a cry from Mukai's right side. The Byakugan's blind spot. In the corner of Itachi's hazy field of view, Shisui launched a flying kick. Shisui. Itachi had the leeway to murmur his friend's name because Mukai had dropped into a defensive posture. No. The word defensive was too simple. As Mukai dodged the kick merely by angling his head, he grabbed hold of Shisui's neck with his outstretched left hand and held him up high, lifting the sturdy body of the young man with a single arm. Strangled like this, Shisui struggled frantically. But the 5 fingers sunk into his throat simply would not peel away. There's this thing called training that you do to overcome your weak points. The first step in my training was to compensate for the Byakugan's blind spot in one eye with physical jutsu. Don't underestimate this old man, brats. Kohina to Mukai. Unconsciously, Itachi called the name of the powerful enemy before him. His feet had also taken a step forward without him realizing it. What? You want me to kill him? It was easy to see why he'd think that. Beaten hard by gentle fist, the flow of chakra in his body interrupted. What kind of counterattack could Itachi have left? Moving forward without any kind of plan was basically an act of masochism. However, Itachi's feet would not stop moving. Even though he didn't remember telling them to do so, they continued to walk heartlessly toward Mukai. Then I'll put him out of his misery, as requested. H&GH. The hand around Shisui's throat tightened its grip. Mukai was going to crush his Adam's apple. "Stop!" Itachi shouted, and the Sharingan in his eyes glittered. "There's no way that sort of obvious genjutsu is going to work on me," Mukai said, turning his face away from Itachi. Before the man's eyes was Itachi's friend's face. "Mangekyo Sharingan," Shisui murmured. The eyes of his friend, now crimson, took on a shape unlike any other Sharingan Itachi had ever seen. Normally, the Sharingan had a small black dot in the center of the eye, and in the circle around that, the snake tails of Magatama-shaped specks popped up. The power differed depending on the number of Magatamas, but the form itself was common to the entire clan. But Shisui's was different. The 3 commas of the Magatama were enlarged and connected, and the small black dot in the center had disappeared, leaving a crimson hollow. If the ratio of red to black in a normal Sharingan was 8-2, then Shisui's eyes at that moment appeared to be a 50-50 struggle for supremacy. Most likely, the intersection of the gazes of Shisui and Mukai had lasted less than 1,000th of a second. For a normal Sharingan, the user couldn't be certain of capturing his opponent in a moment that short. Shisui had not missed that fleeting instant. Mukai had definitely been ensnared in the genjutsu. "Mukai!" Shisui shouted, dumbfounded, the hand around his throat releasing him at last. Before his eyes, Mukai fell, a spray of blood shooting from his stomach. Itachi stared, rooted to the spot. Mukai had cut his own stomach. The instant Shisui's Sharingan had been activated, Mukai had stiffened slightly and pulled a kunai from his pocket to slash across into his own belly. "Hold on, Mukai!" Shisui shouted, crouching down to cradle the ninja's head. "I'm a spy for another village. Any interference with my brain and a jutsu that makes me end my own life is executed. You can't save me." Mukai coughed, and blood spilled out of his mouth. I've never seen anyone caught in a genjutsu in that short a time before. "What the hell was that?" Shisui didn't answer. "Uchiha's secret jutsu, huh?" Shisui faltered, and Itachi glanced at him before addressing Mukai. "Do you have anything you want to say?" "As so, this is where we're at. I did what I did on my own. My wife and kid had nothing to do with it, so, you're saying the crime of treason was yours alone?" "Totally selfish, but, well," with a trembling hand, Mukai groped for something in his pocket. Itachi pushed aside Mukai's fingers and pulled out the object he was fumbling for. He grabbed a cigarette from the package and put it between the man's lips. A light. This time, Shisui pulled the lighter from Mukai's pocket and held the flame to the end of the cigarette. Mukai took a long drag, letting the smoke flow down to the bottom of his lungs before exhaling the smoke as though relishing the taste. "This is how a ninja dies, you know? I'll be waiting for you over there." Mukai's hand dropped, cigarette still between his fingers, and he stopped moving. "It's over," Shisui said, his voice shaking with exhaustion. Itachi nodded. "That Sharingan, will you keep quiet about it to the guys in the village?" Shisui murmured, still staring at Mukai. "Yeah." "Mangekyo Sharingan," Shisui said, and his eyes showed once again the strange pattern. "When the time comes, I'll tell you, just you, everything." Itachi felt an irresistible attraction to the unknown power secreted away in his friend. "Team Row, HM," Danzo muttered, gaze trained on the paper before him as Itachi stood at attention and watched. They were in Danzo's room of the house given to the Foundation. Sitting in front of the ebony desk, Danzo rested the elbow of his left arm on the armrest and held the papers in his right hand, not even glancing at Itachi. "The team leader is Hatake Kakashi, hmm?" "Yes," Itachi replied, briefly. He had been curious this whole time about the man standing beside Danzo. A Foundation member in a white tiger mask. It wasn't anything particular about the man or the mask. He was just curious. The eyes on the other side of the round holes in the white mask had been staring at Itachi, almost glaring at him. For some reason, the treacherous gaze unsettled him. "He is an excellent ninja," Danzo said, almost a declaration. "Hatake Kakashi," Itachi had been saved by him not long after he became a ninja. On a mission to guard the daimyo of the Land of Fire, they were attacked by an unknown man, and Itachi's teammate Tenma had been killed. His Sharingan not yet awakened, Itachi had been prepared for death, faced with the overwhelming difference in power between himself and the man. However, the man had suddenly muttered Kakashi's name and vanished. Even now, Itachi didn't really understand why the man had disappeared. Just that he had definitely murmured Kakashi's name and vanished. But Itachi had no way of knowing now if it was because the man was afraid of Kakashi or if it was for some other reason. He has a darkness inside. This is the most important element for the Anbu. Darkness. Do I have that too? Itachi questioned himself. Rest assured. You also have plenty of darkness, Danzo said, almost as though he had seen right through Itachi. Having come into contact with Danzo any number of times now, Itachi wasn't particularly surprised. The man excelled at discerning other people's mental states. It was a simple thing to jump ahead with suppositions to a certain extent and reply to unspoken thoughts. That was all Danzo was doing. Prepare a transfer celebration, Danzo said, dropping the paper and standing up. He tucked his ebony chair under the desk of the same material, stood next to Tiger Mask, and looked at Itachi. And then he placed a hand on the man's shoulder, and a rare sunny smile spread across his face. This man is going to be on loan to Team Ro. Although Danzo's foundation was also a part of the Anbu, it had a different chain of command and leadership from the Anbu, which was under the direct control of the third Hokage. The two organizations were completely separate. Itachi had heard that because of this, they didn't regularly exchange information or personnel. Don't worry. I naturally obtained Hiruzen's permission, Danzo offered, as if reading his mind once more. No matter how many times that Itachi heard that arrogant way of speaking, he could never grow to like it. Nice to meet you. My name is Shuguru, the man in the tiger mask abruptly said. His voice was mixed with a dry rustling sound, as if something was stuck in his throat, making it hard to hear what he was saying. Shuguru had a serious illness in his throat when he was young, and he hasn't been able to speak that well since. Missions which require talking are difficult, but other than that, I will do anything. There was a strange quality to his voice, but his tone was light. He seemed to have a friendly nature. You can use this man as your hands and feet. Hands and feet? Yes, Shuguru replied to Itachi's question to Danzo. I am a member of the Foundation. Master Danzo's orders are absolute. So, if I am ordered to be the hands and feet of Itachi, I am prepared to give my life for you, even if you are younger than me, he noted, with a deadpan look that implied sarcasm. Itachi didn't even smile as he stared at Danzo. I can make it in the Anbu by myself. Don't take this too seriously. At best, Shuguru is on loan to Team Ro. Your team leader Kakashi doesn't know about this. And you needn't even be aware of Shuguru. But he will always be keeping you safe. Keeping me safe? Are you saying that someone is targeting me? The first Uchiha Anbu, a mere 11 years old. That position's plenty to inspire prejudice and jealousy. Itachi was silent. He had indeed been baptized by the kunai of his comrades on the road from the training ground that was the venue for the meet and greet with Team Ro. It wasn't as though any of them had hit him, but kunai had come raining down on him endlessly from the air. A wordless force to block his path to the training ground. Itachi hadn't avoided them or protested, but simply walked through them indifferently. After realizing what his comrades had done, Kakashi had scolded them, but there wasn't one person who was really sorry for what they'd done. I value you. I won't have you dying young because of the jealousy of your teammates, or some such. No matter who attacks me, do not underestimate the ninjas of the Anbu. Danzo cut Itachi off. The closer you get to the center of the village, the more people you will encounter who do not have a favorable impression of the Uchiha. It's entirely plausible that some of them might try to kill you and make it look like you died during a mission. And if you died, what would your clan think? Impossible, I'm saying that impossible situation is entirely possible. Danzo nodded deeply, as if to affirm Itachi's thinking. Itachi dies on mission. His father and the others suspect a plot on the part of the villagers. Itachi's death would be the perfect trigger for an explosion for those dissatisfied with the position of the clan within the village. When Itachi thought about the fact that his own death could become the trigger for a coup d'etat, he felt a shiver run up his spine. You're already in a position of serious responsibility with both the Uchiha clan and in the village. Danzo moved away from Shuguru and came around the desk to stand next to Itachi before placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You must be a bridge connecting the village and the clan for me. Live a long time, Itachi. Danzo said the same sort of things his father had said. Konoha and the Uchiha clan. Was this a relationship of equals? The Uchiha clan were also people living in the village of Konoha. In which case, wasn't the antagonistic nature of their relationship unnatural right from the start? Why didn't Konoha have complete rule over the Uchiha clan? Why did the clan harbor such dissatisfaction toward the village, despite the fact that the brethren of the clan had even been given the right to self-governance? A presence to connect the two. As his father put it, a pipeline. In Danzo's words, a bridge. They were the same thing. I will protect you. You fulfill your duties in the Umbu without worry, Uchiha Itachi, Danzo told him smugly. Itachi bowed slightly, before quickly leaving the room. It's been a while, huh? Izumi said, her head hanging. Itachi was in a small park in the clan compound in the evening. He had joined the Umbu without incident and finished his report to Danzo. At the entrance to the compound, he had run into Izumi on her way home from a mission. Without either of them inviting the other, they naturally turned toward the park. Izumi got on a swing, while Itachi sat down on the bench behind her. Sorry about that time. That time? Itachi asked in response. Izumi looked back at him over her shoulder as she swung back and forth. You know, at the tea shop in the village. He remembered. Izumi was apologizing for getting mad and flying out of the shop. They hadn't actually talked, just the two of them, since then. All kinds of things had happened in the intervening days, and Itachi honestly hadn't had the time to think about her. So, he had completely forgotten about the incident in the tea shop until that very minute. To start with, though, even if she was apologizing now, Itachi hadn't been angry at all at the time, so it wasn't as though he had anything to forgive her for. I'm the one who should apologize, Itachi said. Why would you have to apologize, Itachi? I didn't think it was bothering you that much. Izumi faced forward again and pumped harder on the swing. What? I was just thinking that's so like you, she said in a bright voice, seemingly in a better mood now. Her feelings shifted so abruptly that Itachi couldn't keep up. Not wanting to take her off this cheerful track, he tried to change the subject. How was your mission? No big deal compared with you, she said, and kicked at the swing to fly up into the air. She did a somersault and landed beautifully. Spreading out her slender arms, Izumi turned around. They just use me however I'm handy, like taking care of the daimyo's wife's pets, or helping move the Land of Fire admin to a new office, and stuff. That's it, huh? Itachi's mouth naturally spread into a smile. He was relieved that she hadn't been on any dangerous missions. He deliberately tried not to look at the answer to the question of why he was relieved. Itachi himself thought he was still half a person as a ninja. Which is why he didn't have the mental leeway to think seriously about Izumi. Walking down the same path as the person you like. Maybe I shouldn't want that. He had understood Izumi's feelings when she said that before running off. But he couldn't respond to them. Hey, Itachi? What? So just like, what if, alright? If you hadn't become a ninja, what would you be? I never thought about it. Itachi had been born to ninja parents, and he had never had any doubts about becoming a ninja himself. He believed that only ninjas could gain the power required to realize his dream of ridding this world of war. So, he was unable to think of a path other than becoming a ninja. You haven't? Izumi hung her head sadly. I heard you joined the Umbu. You did? Everyone in the compound knows. The Umbu was a deeply secretive division. The village also wished that the ninjas who belonged to it would not make themselves known, to the extent that that was possible. And yet, Itachi's posting to the Umbu was already spreading throughout the compound. The idea that this showed the strength of the solidarity of the clan was a nice one, but was it really alright for so much information to be leaked? The clan were so quick to mention a coup d'etat. What would they do if the people in the village were to hear of it? Hey, Itachi? Izumi's voice brought him back to reality. I'm scared. Of what? I feel like you're getting further and further away. He felt something touch his chest suddenly. Izumi's head rested there, below his own. Izumi, I am sorry, Itachi. But just let me stay like this a little longer. Unable to do anything else, Itachi simply waited for Izumi to calm down again. We're still 11 years old. But, Itachi, you're already... Where are you going, Itachi? I'm not going anywhere. Probably. He swallowed that last word. A little anticlimactic, isn't it? The man in the fox mask asked, standing next to the simple door opposite Itachi as if to keep the door between them. When Itachi stayed silent, the man added, well, just because it's the Umbu doesn't mean it's all dangerous missions. Guarding the Hokage is a legitimate mission, too. I know that, Itachi replied, matter-of-factly. Like the man, his face was covered with a fox mask. In contrast with the almond eyes of the man's mask, however, the holes that opened up in the position of Itachi's eyes were round. The name of the man in the mask with the almond eyes was Hatake Kakashi. He was the leader of Umbu Team Ro, and Itachi's direct supervisor. Although he was still young, at 20 years old, he had already been a member of the village's elite Umbu for 8 years. He was talented, and the Hokage trusted him implicitly. Itachi had known about him for a while. The time Tenma died. It was this very Kakashi who had come to help Itachi. And if he had shown up a little sooner, Tenma might not have died. Ninjas focused only on reality and results. The fact that Tenma was dead was something that could not be reversed. Itachi had no intention, at this late date, of thinking about these sorts of what-ifs and layering on their approaches. You remember the basic tactics of the Umbu? Kakashi lobbed an innocuous question his way. He was a good supervisor, carefully considering the feelings of his young new subordinate. Friend killer. The phrase of choice for people looking to badmouth Kakashi. Itachi had heard it any number of times since he joined the Umbu. However, every time it had been from someone older than Kakashi satisfied with their subordinates. It was nothing more than an insult stemming from annoyance or jealousy. If it was to complete the mission, team leader Kakashi would even kill his friends. The faces of those uttering this ugly abuse were always mean. But on a day-to-day basis, Itachi had never heard a single word against their comrades from Kakashi. In fact, it was actually notable how careful he was to pay his respect to the bonds he shared with them. At that very moment, Kakashi was being extra attentive to Itachi, who had only just joined the Umbu. He was intently searching for a way to start a conversation. I've got the basics in my head, Itachi noted, standing straight and not looking at his kind team leader. No surprise there. For Itachi, who had read every document he could get a hold of on the use of small ninja teams, the particular strategies of the Umbu were extremely fascinating. 4-person teams, 3-person teams, 2-person teams. Even what action to take as a solitary ninja. The list of practical tactics, from constant offensive positioning to exploring the possibilities for the completion of the mission, was comprehensive, including every situation a ninja might encounter on a mission. Everything from feints and disturbances to defensive formations and cooperation had been honed and specialized to crush the enemy and execute the mission. Spurred on by his intellectual curiosity, Itachi had devoured the thick Umbu tactical books in a single night. There's clearly a reason why they called you a prodigy when you came to the academy, Kakashi said. I'm not sure if the youngest graduate ever can really say anything here. When I graduated, it was in the middle of the Great War, and they needed ninjas. The situation's different now. Now that Kakashi mentioned it, the current system at the academy was different from how it had been when Itachi graduated. The Great War and its aftereffects still lingered when he graduated. Because of that, once his actual abilities were recognized, he was skipped ahead, leading to his early graduation. But now that it was a time of peace, the Hokage was determined that ninjas must be carefully cultivated over a number of years, and it was no longer possible to graduate in a short time as it had been in the past. Thus, no matter how talented Sasuke was, he couldn't become a ninja until he was 11 years old. It's only in my head. Once I actually try moving with my comrades, I won't be able to say that I studied anything. You'll be fine, Kakashi said, almost as though he had seen it already. In his voice, Itachi heard no excessive expectation or irresponsibility from carelessness or pride. His voice was completely casual, which was exactly why it was mysteriously persuasive. I'm hoping that the Umbu will become a place of pride for you. Thank you. A supervisor I can count on. There was something about this man Kakashi that made him think that. No matter how many times I come here, I never grow to like it. In the main building of the shrine, dominated by heat, Itachi took a deep breath through his nose, filling the space all around him with the brethren of the clan. The regular meeting. Now that Azumi was a genin, she was there, too. Since she was the same age as he was, and because he was still a novice, Itachi was in a lower seat in the same row as her, separated by a few people. Perhaps overwhelmed by the heat, she was still, her face lowered. He wanted to call out to her, but with the heat, and the main building actually falling silent at that moment, there was a wordless pressure that would not allow him to do anything so rash as that. Well, then, let's begin. His father stood up from his seat in the front row, and turned toward everyone gathered in the hall. Those present held their breath, and waited for Fugaku to speak. The scene was like the founder of some religious sect and his believers. The leader, burdened with the resentment of the clan. This was the dark face of Itachi's father, Fugaku. It has been officially decided that my son Itachi will join the Umbu. He has already begun to carry out missions as a member. A quiet cheer echoed through the shrine. Now we have a pipeline connecting our clan with the center of the village. No longer will we simply receive from the village, we will also actively investigate, ourselves. It wouldn't be his father doing that. Itachi, Fugaku called his son's name. Without a sound, Itachi got to his feet, and waited for his father to speak again. You have joined the Umbu. Have you noticed anything? The question was much too vague, confusing Itachi. The villagers were prejudiced against the clan, and did not think well of them. That was likely the answer his father was hoping for. And in fact, his comrades in the Umbu had not celebrated Itachi joining them. There were even some who made a show of their displeasure. But he couldn't say without reservations that this was simply because he was a member of the Uchiha clan. At 11 years of age, Itachi's youth was another source of irritation. It is a fact that the people of the village are wary of the Uchiha clan and do not think well of us, Itachi began. It is. Once Itachi offered the answer his father was seeking, a sympathetic voice called out from the seats. But, Itachi continued, giving his voice extra weight as if to push back the hasty hooting, that said, I don't feel any active hatred, no persecution of the clan. At best, I believe their feelings are the sort of worries and jealousies that anyone has. As his father listened with arms crossed, only his right eyebrow twitched upward. This worry and jealousy you mentioned can come together and be twisted into a bigger emotion. As if to agree with his father, the brethren began to chatter and make a commotion. To push through the voices of the crowd, Itachi concentrated his strength in the bottom of his belly and spat out, if you add backward predictions like that, anything can be reduced to a negative phenomenon. As if to stand in the way of his father, silently glaring at him, a single man stood up. His father's trusted retainer, Yashiro. "Hey, Itachi," he called, his narrow eyes gleaming murderously. Silently, Itachi turned to his father's confidant. "You're really siding with the village here, aren't you? Whose ally are you anyway, the village's or the clan's? Maybe your judgment's a bit dull after joining the Umbu, getting a little full of yourself?" "It's better not to force things into a framework with words," Itachi murmured. "What?" Yashiro called back. "Enemy." Ally. Itachi's eyes shone a faint crimson. If you differentiate between things with the tool of words, you lose sight of the true situation. You're forced to step into places you shouldn't. I don't have time for this incomprehensible back and forth. "Whose ally are you, Uchiha Itachi?" Yashiro's angry roar returned the main shrine to silence. "It's obvious, isn't it?" Itachi glared at his father's retainer. "I am a member of the Uchiha clan." "You got a sec?" Shisui called out. The meeting over, Itachi was walking home a little ways behind his father. Fugaku looked back, curious at Itachi's suddenly stopping, and saw his son's good friend there. "What's wrong, Shisui?" "I wanted to talk with your son for a minute." Fugaku looked at Shisui and Itachi in turn, before saying simply, "Don't be too late," and walking off into the night by himself. "Shisui," Itachi said his friend's name once they were alone together. "I understand how you feel so well, it hurts." His friend's brow furrowed, and he looked vexed from the bottom of his heart. Yashiro's the leader of the group pushing for a coup. To that man, all the people of the village are enemies. The abuse Itachi had been showered with earlier still echoed in his ears. He lowered his face, as if to look away from the image of Yashiro that rose up in the back of his mind. "Since it looked like you were going into the Umbu, I did some maneuvering of my own." "What do you mean?" "I talked directly with the Hokage and obtained the authority to independently investigate the true state of affairs in the clan." What did investigating the true state of affairs in the clan mean? Itachi was confused, not immediately understanding what his friend was saying. Shisui opened his mouth again, as if understanding that. "I've been taking off my regular duties, to make sure the clan doesn't get any more riled up. Their dissatisfaction is going to explode. The Hokage promised that I could act at my own discretion to prevent that, and gave me a position in the Umbu. But that's just a name only. In the end, I report directly to the Hokage, so your dad and the others don't know about my joining the Umbu. Even inside, only a few people know." "You actually went to the Lord Hokage?" "Relax. I didn't say anything about the coup." If the village found out about the clan's scheming, Itachi could see that they would no longer be able to continue as they had up to that point, with each keeping the other in check. "Itachi, we're gonna keep fighting to stop the clan from exploding. You from inside the Umbu, and me as a ninja, reporting directly to the Lord Hokage. No matter what happens, I'll never forget my promise with you." Shisui thrust a fist out. Itachi stuck his arm out to touch it. "Above all else, we have to make them stop with the coup, at least," Shisui said firmly. Itachi nodded in agreement. Itachi didn't want to believe what he saw before his eyes. In a windowless room in the basement of the building given to the Umbu, monitors were crowded together, their screens full of sights familiar to Itachi. The Nine Tails incident. The village officials suspected Uchiha involvement, Kakashi remarked, standing beside him. Itachi listened, staring at the monitors. Not satisfied with just isolating the clan compound on the edge of the village, they started monitoring everything in the compound, 24/7. "And that's this room?" "It is." His Umbu comrades were controlling the images with the countless buttons and levers in front of the monitors. He couldn't see the expressions on their faces because of the masks they wore, but despite this, he felt fairly certain that they were relaxed. That was the extent to which his comrades had let down their guard. And no wonder. For them, this was a monotonous job, simply staring at monitors. They didn't give a thought to how monumental it was for the Uchiha clan. "So, we can see everything?" We don't need to check on each and every little thing, but basically. I understand. I will under no circumstances inform the clan. There was no way he could tell them. If they found out that every corner of the compound was being monitored 24 hours a day, the rage his father and the others felt would become even more intense. It would simply add ample fuel to the fire for those who were clamoring for a coup. Itachi had been sent to the Umbu by his father as a spy to investigate the true state of affairs in the village. If he were to faithfully fulfill that role, he should report this fact to the clan immediately. The moment he abandoned the idea of telling them, he abandoned the idea that he was a clan spy. From now on, you're going to be monitoring here all day. You're telling me to watch my clan comrades? Abruptly, the man in the monkey mask, who had been sitting in front of the monitors, listening quietly to the exchange between Kakashi and Itachi, stood up. Whether they're your clan comrades or not, a mission is a mission. Your clan drew in 9 tails. So they're being monitored. Accept reality, newbie. Kakashi spoke the name of the man in the mask reprovingly. Their colleague next to Ko whirled around in his chair and turned his mask toward Kakashi. It was the round face of a cat. His little sister was killed by the 9 tails. So he doesn't have the best impression of the Uchiha clan. Don't involve your personal feelings in a mission, Kakashi told them. I understand. I'm sorry. Ko came closer, head hanging. He bowed neatly and passed by Kakashi. All right, you're up, newbie, he said, unhappily. The round face of the cat trailed after him. Oh, you're here, good, Kakashi said, looking at the door the 2 men had disappeared through. Standing in front of it was the ninja who had been with Danzo, Shuguru. It had already been just over 4 hours since Kakashi left. Shuguru had not said a single word. Itachi had never been particularly good at small talk anyway, so he didn't find the silence painful. The time simply passed, with the 2 of them staring intently at the monitors. It was pure chance that he saw it. Although it was his mission, Itachi's blood was not cold enough to allow him to coolly watch over the lives of his brethren. He frequently switched the monitor image before his eyes, trying as much as possible not to stay in one place. By viewing a series of moments like this, he managed to maintain his presence of mind somehow. He had trained to memorize a scene with a single glance, so Itachi was confident that he was amply executing his professional duties. At one of these momentary fragments, he felt the faintest sense that something was off, and he stopped his hand. The composition he expected, from the gates of Nakano Shrine. The stone paving of the path stretched straight out from the stone gates to the main building of the shrine. But the space precisely in the middle, between the gates and the main building, looked slightly twisted to Itachi's eyes. Just for a fraction of a second. The scene in the monitor had already regained its stillness. It had been a faint disturbance that Shuguru most likely hadn't noticed. If anyone else had seen it, they would no doubt have thought it was simply the wind shaking the camera. But Itachi had seen that disturbance before. The scene near the center of the stone paving had been disturbed by a vortex centered on one point. Almost like the surrounding space was being sucked into that point. The man in the mask. The phenomenon shown on the monitor was exactly the same as the jutsu the man in the mask had used when he escaped after he attacked Itachi and his team during the mission to guard the daimyo of the Land of Fire. Why would that man, Itachi muttered carelessly, before he noticed Shuguru's presence, and regretted it. But Shuguru's attention was focused on the monitor before him. Annoyed by his own inexperience, Itachi dove once more into the sea of his thoughts. When Tenma died, Itachi had clearly seen the right eye of the man, shining behind the mask. A black dot floated in the center of a crimson eye, 3 comma-shaped magatamas in the concentric circles. He was certain that the man's right eye had been a Sharingan, which meant that he was a member of the Uchiha clan. Over 3 years had passed since that incident. From time to time, the scene of his teammate's death would come back to life in his mind. Tenma lost his life, an almost unsightly terror plastered on his face, looking as though he had no idea what was actually happening. Itachi had been astonished at the overwhelming difference in power that existed between himself and the man in the mask. He had despaired at his own powerlessness and ended up activating his own Sharingan. All of which meant that the man in the mask was the man who had awakened Itachi as a true Uchiha ninja. The murder of his colleague, and yet, a person he was indebted to. He felt a strange connection with the man in the mask. Over the last 3 years, Itachi had wondered any number of times about the man's true identity. From what he could infer, Itachi had thought the man was perhaps a member of the Uchiha clan, but that changed to a certainty now. The blur in the video was because of the man in the mask. The man had appeared at Nakano Shrine. The day Tenma died, a Sharingan had glittered beneath the attacker's mask. All of this clearly pointed to him being a member of the Uchiha clan. So then, who exactly in the clan was it? In the ensuing 3 years, Itachi had contact with all the men of the clan living in the village. There was no one with ninjutsu to control space the way the man did. There was also no one with that same voice or aura. And more than anything else, Itachi had a hunch that the man was not someone from the village. So then, who? The Uchiha clan had lived in the village of Konoha since its founding. And he hadn't heard of anyone outside the Uchiha clan having the Sharingan. Although there were exceptions like Hatake Kakashi, they were still within Konoha. If precious Kekii Jinkai like the Sharingan or the Byakugan had been leaked outside the village, it would have been a serious affair for the entire nation. There was no way the village records wouldn't have mentioned it. And as of the present date, there was nothing about the Sharingan being leaked to another village. When he thought about it like this, the possibilities naturally narrowed. The first was that a member of the Uchiha clan thought to have died in the Great War had survived, and become the man in the mask. It was a general rule that if a member of the Uchiha clan died in battle, their Sharingan would be brought home by another ninja. So, the man couldn't have stolen it from a corpse. In which case, it made sense to assume that someone thought to have died was alive, and coming to the compound with his Sharingan still in his possession. The second possibility was that the man in the mask was someone who had broken away from the Uchiha clan. This was less likely than the first option. Because since the founding of Konoha, only one person had ever broken away from the clan and left the village. Uchiha Madara. The man who founded Konoha together with Hashirama of the Senju clan. He had left the village, and was said to have died in battle with Hashirama in a place called the Valley of the End. It wasn't possible for someone who had died to be alive. At this point, Itachi should have abandoned this second option. But for some reason, he couldn't completely put it aside. He had felt the man's overwhelming chakra, his powerful presence, for himself, and it had been stronger than that of any ninja Itachi had encountered up to that point. If a ninja like that had died in battle, then it should have gone down in history. However, nowhere in the records of the great battles of the past was the death of such a capable Uchiha ninja verified. In which case, Itachi could consider the idea that Madara was alive. Itachi. A voice came at him from far away. Itachi. Shuguru called Itachi back to reality. It's about time to switch shifts. Itachi answered vaguely. Even as he had indulged in his thoughts, his fingertip had kept pressing the button. Although he was not watching it at all, the monitor he had his eyes trained unchanged from one scene to another in quick succession. Are you all right? What do you mean? He asked in response. No. It's nothing. Shuguru didn't say anything more. About 2 months had passed since Itachi joined the Embu, but his monotonous days continued unchanged. His main duties were guarding the Hokage's office and practicing with his comrades. He still hadn't been given any missions that would expose his life to danger. You couldn't exactly say the village was at peace if we were out on assassinations and dangerous missions all the time. The fact that we've got nothing to do is proof of peace, Kakashi had said, and laughed easily. The village is at peace. And yet, Itachi wondered. If the village was supposed to be at peace, then why was his heart in such turmoil? Why did he feel like things were so urgent? Because of his clan. In the shadow of the tranquility of the village, the Uchiha brethren were seeking chaos. This was the main cause of the disquiet in Itachi's heart. Whatever happened, he had to at least prevent a coup. But he couldn't come up with a concrete plan to do that. He had said he would move with Shisui, but the two of them could stand side by side with their arms spread out, and they still wouldn't be able to completely hold back the clan's eagerness for destruction. The fact that he couldn't find a way to break this deadlock had Itachi panicked. Wah, ah, ah, ah. An ear-splittingly loud voice pierced his ears on his way home from work. Unconsciously, his feet stopped, and he noted the little park ahead of him. It was already late in the day, evening. The sun had long ago slid off to the west, and a gloom was descending on the area. A boy, likely the one who laughed, was standing on a swing, staring out at three human shadows running off. Probably his friends. I'm telling you, you guys don't have a chance against the great Uzumaki Naruto here, the boy on the swing shouted. The shadows didn't turn back toward him, but left the area, chatting to each other about something, seemingly friendly with each other. Staring after the three, the boy who had named himself as Naruto sat down sadly on the swing. His earlier words had clearly been a show of courage. Itachi had understood this, once the boy named himself. There was no one in the village who did not know Uzumaki Naruto. The boy before him had been involved in the Nine Tails incident that had terrified the people of the village. The child with the nine tails inside him. When he walked along the road, everyone lowered their voices. There was only one person who did not know that the nine tails lived within his body. That was Naruto himself. He was unaware of the calamity in the village, it was sealed up in his body, and he lived with people in fear of him. Naruto couldn't understand why people persecuted him. And both of his parents were already gone from this world. He had no one to shower him with unconditional love. Itachi turned his feet toward the park. He advanced quietly toward the swing with the boy, moving weakly back and forth. He sat down beside Naruto, whose face was turned to the ground. Whoa! Noticing Itachi's sudden appearance, Naruto nearly fell off his swing in surprise. He flapped his arms and legs more than absolutely necessary, and managed to stop the swing before turning suspicious eyes on Itachi. Don't go scaring me like that. Sorry. So, who are you? Naruto stared at him with wide eyes. Pumping the swing, Itachi turned his gaze forward. It doesn't matter who I am, does it? My mom says I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. She's gone, though, Itachi said. A bashful smile spread across Naruto's face as he threw his right hand up to the back of his head. So, you know that? Uzumaki Naruto is a famed prankster. Am I that famous? In a certain sense. Heh. Naruto laughed happily, unable to understand Itachi's sarcasm. Your friends ran off. If they don't get my pranks, then they're not my pals. Naruto's voice was excessively bright, like he was trying desperately to act cheerful so that his loneliness wouldn't be seen. Everyone knew Naruto's true self. For the village, the Nine Tails incident had left a scar deeper than any other. Suspected of having controlled the Nine Tails, the Uchiha clan was also still trapped under that cloud. Itachi himself had been slandered more times than he could remember because of it. There was probably not a single person in the village willing to have any meaningful contact with the boy who housed the source of that trauma in his body. In other words, Naruto was the greatest victim of the Nine Tails incident. Itachi didn't know how the Nine Tails came to be sealed in the boy's body. But he thought that anyone who would seal the embodiment of disaster in a baby was not in their right mind. Perhaps they hadn't considered how the child would be persecuted. The details of the Nine Tails incident were a closely guarded secret in the village. The truth was hidden in darkness, and only Naruto was left. Naruto was one part of the darkness of the village. The village had been built sacrificing people like Naruto. The village officials had sealed the disaster in Naruto and directed the dissatisfaction of the people somewhere else with their persecution of the Uchiha clan in order to skillfully keep the village running, deliberately producing a darkness to hide their own darkness. And now Itachi, too, was one part of the darkness in the village, because the itself was the true darkness of the village. Bro. Naruto widened his eyes next to him. You just got real quiet all of a sudden. You alright? I'm fine. Alright, good. Naruto looked up at him with worry in his eyes. It's probably time for you to be getting home. I can go home, but it's not like there's anyone there. Naruto's mouth twisting downward, he put on a show of being tough. Then I'll go home. What? Naruto cried in exaggerated surprise when Itachi stood up. Keep fighting, Itachi said, words he thought offered no real peace of mind. But Naruto seemed happy and chuckled to himself as he rubbed his nose with a finger. And then he leapt forcefully off the swing, stood tall, and pointed his index finger at Itachi. My name's Uzumaki Naruto. I'm gonna be Hokage someday. You are? Hokage, huh? A flame blazed up in Itachi's heart. Even as he carried the burden of the village's darkness, this boy was not giving up on his own destiny. Not resenting the village, not hating the people, he believed in his own dream, honestly and wholeheartedly. I hope you are. I'm totally going to be Hokage. Remember me till then, bro. Smiling in response, Itachi turned his back to Naruto and started walking. The heavens above glittered with stars. Danzo called him in. He sat in his chair with a sour look on his face. Next to the master of the foundation was Shuguru, supposedly a member of Team Ro. How's the Ambu? I don't know yet. An honest answer. You'll no doubt have any number of experiences from now on that you could only have in the Ambu. Until then, polish your skills, Danzo said, almost as if he were Itachi's boss. But Itachi was in the Ambu, which was under the direct control of the Hokage, with no connection with the foundation. In terms of work, Danzo and Itachi basically had nothing to do with one another. I called you here today for a reason, Itachi nodded silently. I've heard that the Uchiha clan compound has been particularly strict with outsiders lately. It was true that in the last few months, the compound had taken on an air of exclusivity. It seemed that his father giving voice to the word coup had given the compound itself a will. You are also going to the regular meetings? Danzo asked, point blank. The Uchiha clan was monitored 24 hours a day by the Ambu. It was only natural that Danzo would be aware of the meetings. Yes, Itachi answered honestly, preparing himself for the worst, knowing that there was no point in hiding anything. Danzo nodded deeply, seemingly satisfied. I'll be frank. I want you to report the details of those meetings to me. His voice slammed into Itachi, containing indescribable pressure. If things continue as they are, the Uchiha clan will fall. Your power is needed to stop that from happening. Are you telling me to betray my clan? You're not betraying them. You're saving them. Danzo rested his elbows on his desk and set his chin in intertwined hands. The hollow of his left eye, a deep, dark cavern, peered out at Itachi. Betrayal is an act that brings about a disadvantage to the betrayed. The act of reporting the details of the meetings to me is to prevent the explosion of your clan, and as such, it is advantageous to them. Thus, it cannot be said to be betrayal. A neat bit of rhetoric. Danzo likely intended to complicate his thinking and blind him, but Itachi was not fooled. No matter what the result was for his clan, telling Danzo what happened at the meetings was nothing other than betrayal. Danzo had misread him. Itachi was not fixated on the word betrayal. I understand. Given that you hate fighting more than anyone, I thought you might say that, the master of the foundation said, in a voice that did not reveal his emotions. Itachi hated it, but it was just as Danzo said. He still hadn't been able to come up with a concrete plan to stop the coup d'etat. Danzo's request, coming at such a time, had an irresistible appeal. They had been able to gain the cooperation of the third Hokage, thanks to Shisui. And Itachi's decision here might turn into an opportunity to use Danzo's power. He would prevent his clan's implosion by connecting it with the center of the village. I don't want to do anything to rob your clan of dignity. I leave the selection of information you bring to me to you. Thank you. I'm counting on you, Itachi. The fate of your clan rests on your decisions. Danzo's voice weighed heavily on Itachi. But Itachi's resolve was not so weak that it could not withstand that weight. He took a deep breath, deep enough to reach the pit of his stomach, as if realizing the heavy responsibility he had been saddled with. It smells like blood somehow. End of chapter 4. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more.